Okay, welcome to Thanos Node. And today I have Alex Strz. Alex is the founder and CEO of Angelblok. Alex has focused on crypto and cryptocurrency-based startups for over 6 years. He's very passionate about the impact of blockchain technology, its utilization and diverse use cases, and its value and transfer. As a former crypto-fiat exchange executive, Alex has years of management and operations experience and has helped companies navigate the ever-changing regulatory landscape. He has worked as a blockchain consultant and advisor across Europe and the United States, including leading various projects through the regulatory landscape and obtaining licenses in the crypto space. As an investor and advisor, he most recently advised successful companies such as Gamerhash and Aleph Zero. He's also passionate about DeFi, Bitcoin, NFTs, decentralization, open source projects, individual self-sovereignty, and of course, the New Orleans Saints. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Alani. That was beautiful. Appreciate that intro.
Thank you. Thank you. So to start, do you believe privacy and self-sovereignty are fundamental human rights?
Oh, starting with the easy stuff. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's especially when we're looking at everything going on right now. I read a very interesting thing recently. I would love to remember where I read it, but it was probably just scrolling through Twitter or Reddit or somewhere else. And I'm going to come at this from a more philosophical standpoint. And it's basically, we have a tendency to forget a lot of the freedoms that have been taken away from us, right? And it happens with every generation. And you have people that are being born right now who don't remember what the 90s were like, right? People born in the 90s, they don't remember what the 70s or 80s looked like. And, you know, one of my favorite things is when talking about things like privacy, matters like self-sovereignty, like I love using plane fare as an example, right? Because up until very recently, and we're talking 70s, 80s, you were able to, like, basically a plane ticket operated like a bearer bond, right? There were names like you had a plane ticket, you were able to board a plane. And everybody who's flown in a plane very recently knows that that is not what it looks like anymore, right? Like I remember a few years back, I had an issue boarding a plane because I had a misspelling. Like there was a letter missing in my name, right? And it's like, this is not you. Like, this is not the same person. I'm like, please believe me, I need to be on this flight and I am the person. I booked this ticket. I don't know, the system messed it up. I have no idea what happened, but please let me on. I need to be there. So, you know, obviously like this is a very absurd and abstract example, but if you look at, you know, absolutely anything that's going on right now, like we talked about this very slightly before we started recording. And one of the things that I was going to say was we're talking about, you know, basically like working long hours and always being accessible. And one of the things that I was going to mention is if not for crypto, like I would probably be using a flip phone right now, right? I would have gone through the full cycle of not having a phone, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, having, you know, my Nokia 3310 or whatever, then having a flip phone, and then graduating to smartphones and all that good stuff, using smartphones for the last, I don't know, since 2008. I think that was my first iPhone. Up until now, still using, you know, smartphones. And I think right now I'm at this age, at this stage in my life where I would love to just, you know, like call, text, and that's it. I don't want anything else, right? But we're not at that level, you know, unfortunately. So I definitely do think these matters are absolutely basics of human function, of humans being able to function in this world. It's very distressing that it's becoming very normal to take away rights, and rights that are lost are rarely regained, which is another issue. This was something that was very stressful during COVID, during the lockdowns, because, you know, like I'm not an anti-vaxxer, like I'm myself vaccinated, and not to turn this into, you know, COVID podcast or anything, but a lot of things that were happening globally, you know, a lot of things that were happening globally, it's not, you know, this discussion of, oh, we're doing this for your safety or for public safety. Like, I've grown up, you know, my parents are Polish. I've lived in Poland for most of my life. I think people tend to forget what communist rule used to look like, right? Especially in the West. And a lot of these measures that were implemented, like they were really tyrannical, right? Like they were like, you will listen to the government and you will obey or else. And you had this happening in countries such as Germany and Australia, and Canada till this day has some issues with this, right? So I think people have a short memory, which does not help us in regaining these freedoms. And everything that's happening in terms of privacy on the internet, like we are like Patriot Act and, post 9/11. It's a great example of this, like it was snuck through. Like I remember, do you remember the COVID bill in the US? What is it, like circa 2020, when they wanted to sneak in like that encryption, like that, encryption is becoming a no-no. Like, so there's things that are happening, and these are not conspiracy theories. These are real bills that are they're attempting to pass them, right? And if you're not wary, if you're not vigilant, like your privacy will be in the hands of people who don't want to protect it. They don't value it. They don't care about your privacy. They don't believe you require any privacy, right?
Yeah.
So it's problematic because a lot of people, they have this approach, and it's been kind of implemented by government, by media from a young age, which is like, well, if you don't have anything to hide, what's the issue, right?
Exactly.
It's very chicken or the egg, right? It's like, no, I have nothing to hide, but that does not mean that you are able to come and verify whether it is I have anything to hide or not, right?
Exactly.
And that's one of the bigger issues that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. There's an old saying that you don't miss what you never had. And you said something earlier around kids born in the 90s have no idea, going back, kids born in the 2000s, and the mere definition of freedom, right? Privacy and self-sovereignty. When we think about at some point in human history, we all came together and agreed to be bound by a set of rules, and we call them the Constitution, whatever you want to call them. And at some point, we agreed to elect fellow citizens to be custodians and help implement those rules. We also agreed to be taxed as a way to fund and protect those rules. Somewhere along the line, wires got crossed, and those who we appointed as civil servants forgot that we appointed them there. They work for us, not the other way around. And many of those have now become institutions you can neither trust nor hold accountable. Through the 80s and the 90s, having to travel to, West Germany, East Germany, even going to, Krakow or Warsaw, and when countries had their own currencies, their own governments, all of that, having to change guilders to pound sterling, all krona. So it gets very interesting when you look at how far the system has come. And the mere idea that there are one or two generations that have zero idea that there was a time, certain freedoms, yes. Is technology better? We know. Are we having different conversations? Yes. All the advancements, great. But the freedoms are actually less. Do you think then that people trade their privacy and freedoms for convenience and the right to participate? So you want to be on Facebook, or you want to be on Instagram or TikTok, whatever. Give us your email, give us your date of birth, take a photo of your face. All these things that, most pedestrian humans don't understand are related to their self-sovereignty and their privacy. And as they give that up, do you think they're even aware of what they're giving up in exchange for the right to participate?
Yeah, of course not. Like it's similar with the majority of other things. I think the average person has a difficult time understanding fundamental mechanics of how the world functions, and especially how this world, our world of technology functions, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't, this is not me throwing shade. Like it's very, very normal. Like I remember in my early 20s, like it's very hard to care about a lot of things if you're not making ends meet, right? Like if you're worried about, can I pay for rent this month? And like, will I be able to pay my bank loan for an extended period of time? Yeah, exactly. So, and I think we're seeing a lot of this, and, I definitely see money being used as a way of helping people forget about these issues, about helping people forget that, yeah, we have access to your emails. And yes, everything you write on Telegram or WhatsApp is it's not a question of if, but it's a question of when it's going to be read by someone it's not supposed to be read by, right? It's very disheartening, I would say, but I definitely don't, quote unquote, blame. I don't put any responsibility almost on the average user, just because there's just so much more important stuff going around. Not to say that, lack of privacy isn't important, but to them at that moment, it's not, the be all end all. And that's a whole other problem, right?
Oh, do you think that's by design?
Somewhat. So I'm definitely, I have a lot of debates with my friends when it comes to, something that you would call conspiracy theories, or, I'm definitely not a person that, believes in lizard people, or I definitely don't believe that COVID is some kind of, coordinated, event that, the elites, have unleashed upon us. I'm not as someone who has,
you're not in Davos right now. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. I don't believe there's a new world order that's trying to be, set upon us. I'm not one of those people.
Oh my God.
I'm a person that has founded a company, my new startup, Angelblok, right? There's over 20 people, right? Before that, at CoinDeal, at our peak, I managed 112 people, if I remember correctly. And where I'm going with this is, I know how difficult it is to coordinate the actions of dozens of people, right? It's very hard. It's very, very difficult.
Well, I know.
Exactly. And to think that we would be able, or there are people that are able to implement systems where we're talking about millions, hundreds of millions, or billions, I'm simply not buying it, right? So a lot of the way that I view these things when it comes to, whether it be COVID, whether it be, what's going on with privacy, and your question, is it by design, or is it something else? I definitely think that if we're implementing Occam's razor here, and the simplest and most direct kind of line of thinking and logic being the right one, I think a lot of stuff just stems from ineptitude, right? I think a lot of things is just people being ignorant, people not being able to do, the right thing or put the right systems in check. I think that's what happened with COVID, right? I definitely think it obviously it's an outbreak. I don't think it was a coordinated event, but a lot of what happened later, it was an ineptitude of action of trying to deal with it, right? So oh my God, what do we do? I don't know, let's lock everyone up. I don't think that was okay, let's lock them up, because I think it was a very short-sighted measure. And it's just basically people like us in government. The only difference is that they're elected officials. They didn't know how to deal with it. And when they started to learn how to deal with it, they're I don't think we did the right thing. So do we back off now? Or they look kind of pissed. Maybe we lock them in a bit longer to cool off, So I think a lot of it just stems from ineptitude and nothing else. And I definitely don't think there's a giant conspiracy theory. I definitely do think that some measures are implemented, how should I put this, in a way that is more planned? Like inflation is a great example. Inflation definitely stems from decades of ineptitude, but right now it definitely looks like it's starting to be used as a tool, right?
As a tool, yeah.
I don't think that's how it started.
So
I definitely don't. I don't think it's a 50-year plan, going off of the gold standard and like, you know what, if we do this in like 1971, then maybe by 2020 we'll have them. So like nobody cares. Nobody cares what's going to happen 50 years in the past if you're not going to be alive. Right?
That leads me to a question. Do you think the Fed, do you think they know what they're doing under the current leadership? Because you can't, for me, I've been doing this 21 years and, 2 exits, 2 failures, 1 tax write-off. And there's one thing is if you can't simplify it, low cognitive load, high adoption, high cognitive load, low adoption. Basically, if we can't simplify a concept, then we either don't know what we're doing or we're just making it up as we go. You can't keep increasing the credit card limit, right? Using complex financial engineering tools. And I get it. The system's much more intertwined than it has historically been. But there are some fundamentals that when we become a debt instruments are very dangerous because there's no terminus, right? It doesn't end somewhere. The minute you start to use complex financial instruments as debt instruments themselves, then you have to keep creating, it becomes a snowball. There's that snowball effect. And what's happening now is Italy started it, the Greeks did it, the Americans figured it out, and it looks like a greater part of Western Europe has been following that trend, starting with when I remember as a kid when, the euro first got implemented, so you had all those kronos, all those pounds, all those guilders, and you didn't know what to do with them, so you just had to take it somewhere to go, and now we're seeing that effect of that. So do you think the Fed do you think they have a handle on this? Or do you think, as you said earlier, they're kind of figuring it out as they go themselves?
Yes, I definitely, I think it's pretty obvious that they don't have a handle on it, right? But on the other hand, it's definitely the effect of simply inheriting a broken system, right? It's almost like blaming the bus driver that, the bus, he's just, I don't know whether it's a school bus, or if it's just like a municipal bus, right? And it's there's a hole in the floor. Half the seats are missing. It's but he's just the driver. He didn't do this. He's on the job, since 6 months back, right? So maybe the last 4 guys, they could have done something about it, but at the end of the day, they're just a driver too. So it's definitely a very broken system.
Kick the can.
Yeah, exactly. We've been kicking the can, for 50 years with this, right? So it's not the best system to start with. You're kicking the can on a system that's inefficient from the very start. But I do have to say one thing, especially about Powell right now and about a lot of his predecessors. They are trying to do something, right? I do have to applaud the fact that even if you look at the 75 BIP rate hikes, right? Even the wording that he's using, right? The last thing he wants is to sway the market too strongly, right? His word choice is very political, and I do actually mean this in a good way, is because he understands that everybody is watching him, right? When he is announcing a potential Fed rate hike, everybody is watching him, and his words, they can make it a lot worse, right? His job at the end of the day is, okay, I know the markets will react. How do I phrase this, and how do I present our plans for the next 6 to 12 months in a way that is not even more detrimental to the market, right? Because that's when you have even more retail going bust, right? So it's small things, but I definitely don't want to be this guy that's oh my God, everything is bad. You've done a horrible job. It's well, everyone can say that, but do you have a better idea? Obviously we would have to raise it before building something new. And I definitely do think that this is something that crypto offers, right? It's just an alternative, right? It has its own batch of problems, sure, but let's fool around with deflationary systems. Let's see where it takes us.
Let's see where it goes. So
and figure it out.
Do you recommend tokenized projects diversify their token spend use cases? Because one of the issues that I've seen across not just Cosmos, ETH, everywhere's, you get great projects, they launch a token, but the token is that single use case. For example, if I bought a token for, storage, I don't need storage, right? Now I have these tokens. Okay. Can I use them for something else? Spend them elsewhere, because not everyone needs the actual use case, but maybe they want to support the project. But they want to, so I don't want to be a DeFi specialist. I have truckloads of positions and other, I don't want to, I just want to be an average Joe citizen who by day I'm a architect or a painter or whatever. But I love this project. I just want to own the tokens and I want to be able to spend it, use it, and just, be part of the ecosystem without it being my full-time job or becoming a, crypto native.
Yeah.
So do you think tokenized projects should start diversifying their token spend use cases?
Well, definitely. One thing that I want to say, and I've been saying this since 2017, is a lot of times coins and tokens, like at the end of the day, why are there maxis, right? And why are people in this chat room so vocal about this particular project? Like, we definitely do tend to, first of all, we are tribal creatures, right? And if you look at the worldwide phenomenon known as football, right? Like, we like to cheer for stuff. We like to support stuff. We like to know that we are a part of something bigger. And we like to know that there's, red team, there's blue team. We cheer for blue team, go blue team. And at the end of the day with crypto, what makes it a bit crazier is there is an economic incentive to do so, right? Back in the start of the bull run, so let's this previous cycle, so like what, end of 2020, like Q3, Q4 of 2020, you had so many great protocols like really doing cool stuff, like Balancer or a lot of these other DeFi protocols. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of people holding these tokens, they were buying them on like Kraken, Coinbase, Binance, and they were never using these tokens for what they were intended for, right? So my question here is, and I will get to your question, but my question here is that bad, right? Like,
I think it's bad, but go on.
Yeah. Like, so, okay, it's not what we intended for them, right? But what if buying them is enough to, hey, maybe, I'm a Bitcoin guy, but I've heard about this DeFi, so I'll buy some of these tokens. Oh, you can actually, wait, there's use cases for this protocol with this token. It's not just like Bitcoin that, deflationary store of value and I just hold it and I control my keys and that's not enough. Cool. Maybe I'll take the leap, but maybe I'll do it in 6 months or 12 months, right? So that's what I mean, that maybe it's not that bad. If it's just the speculative aspect, then yeah, that's getting pretty shallow at this point. So I definitely think that's bad.
Yeah, because there's a difference between buying a coin and or token in order to sell it versus buying it in order to spend it.
Yeah.
Buying it in order to...
Well, that's where, like, as much flack as they've taken, like I do need to tip my hat to Binance and everything that they've done. Like, they've been taking some heat, after FTX as well. But first of all, there's a few different things that I wanted to say here, and this more directly answers your question. If anyone was here for the 2000, what was it, like July or maybe a bit earlier, the 2017 ICO of Binance, right? Like, that token is not what it is right now. Right. Yeah. So that's one thing that I really like is basically these every quarter or whatever, you go back to the drawing board and it's like, okay, what else can this token do? Right. Like, I don't know if people remember, like back in 2017, like one of the functionalities on Binance was you would vote for new coins and tokens to be added to the exchange, and every vote cost like 0.2 BNB back when BNB was like dirt cheap, right? And like that was one of the main, like that plus fees was like some of the main utility that BNB had back then, right? Like now it's just like everywhere throughout their ecosystem, and like I love stuff like that. It's like it shows evolution, right? But on the other hand, it's guys like Binance, companies like Binance, they are the ones that are making it possible to, to have this, storage or something else and like actually spending it, right? So like having this system where like there is a Binance card and you can load it up with crypto and it converts it, to fiat in real time, and you pay the merchant, right? And makes everything very, very seamless. And it seems so simple, but that's definitely where we should be going with this,
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's only like 10 or 15 currencies that are supported on Binance Card, and it's only available in Europe. I'm very sorry to my American friends. But, this is definitely something that like we've been waiting for a really long time, because it makes...
Isn't that why crypto was created? As an alternative?
In what way?
In terms of, as an alternative to
absolutely
medium of exchange. I can go to Atlanta today and buy a Lamborghini with Bitcoin. Okay? It's happened.
Yep.
I know 3 or 4 dudes who did exactly that. So I'm looking at going, wait a minute. We have because I've seen a lot of very well-run projects with dynamite teams. And the one part that's missing is take your token, just expand the use cases, man. Like, I don't have to be a crypto native. I know people who want to get involved. 1 out of 100 people is a crypto native. The other 99, they don't even know where to start. They'll get the token, but then okay, I'm just going to stake it and wait for it to maybe go up so I can sell it.
Yeah.
But if I can take that token and I go, you know what? I'm going to go use it to, post an article on, say, Alexandria, or go use it to buy a T-shirt, or, buy this. So this is my favorite brewery, Ass Clown Brewery. They're down the road. Go buy beer from my favorite. This isn't beer, but this is coffee. From my favorite brewery. Things like that. And
should have told me. I would have joined you if it was beer.
Hey, well, but the point being, the more elastic the spend use case, right? Yeah. The higher the market reach, the easier it is to onboard non-crypto natives, and there's a direct correlation between token spend and elasticity in token value appreciation. And, to your earlier point, how do we get more projects to start thinking along those lines beyond just the core native use case? Like Akash, for example, those of us that are invested, that are involved in the ecosystem, yes, we understand the value, but the average Joe is not looking to spin up a node. You go to a college campus, you go to a journalism school. They're not even, they might work their cell phones, but they're not techies. They just people, okay, I get the token, now what? And okay, well, you can stake it. Then what? You can LP it. Then what? Hubba. So it gets into this, when I say, how do they diversify their spend use cases? To your point, perhaps that's going to be the next. And taking that Binance example, I think that might be the next evolution, in addition to UI, UX being the next big thing. Because right now, the cognitive load for Web3 is pretty high. And we need to bring it down to lower the barrier for people to enter positions, whether as a user, in whatever the case is, comfortably, without needing to spin up a command line interface to do different things.
So my position here is, I think that when it comes to token design, there is a bit of a duality. And what I mean here is, and I've had this problem, like I've woken up with this problem for the majority of the last 2 years, right? Because the duality of token design that is in my head right now is, how do we design our system involving this token? Because what we can do is, do you need the token in order to access even the very fundamentals of the system that we've developed, which obviously then it serves doubly as this gatekeeping mechanism, which means no token, no entry, right? You cannot participate, whether it's a protocol or anything else, which is obviously a hindrance to mass adoption. Or do we approach this with, there are various benefits of being a token holder, or this token gives you additional things in the system that we're building, right? So that's one thing that I want to say. I definitely do believe that I have a huge issue, like what you just mentioned a second ago. Like, what can you do with the token? Well, you can stake it. And it's like, so, but what do you mean by staking? Because this is so problematic, because we've taken staking, like as an industry, we've taken staking. What it used to mean is you are securing a proof of stake or a delegated proof of stake network, right? Like you are the beginning of the funnel for block validation, essentially, right?
Boom.
And which is super important. And right now, it basically means, well, you stake your token, so you lock it up. Okay, but why do I do that? Because you get more token. It's like, okay, cool. Like,
exactly.
and that's where my issue is. If it's like, that's actually something like, not to like, I don't want to shill Angelblok or anything. Like, if anybody listening wants to check it out, be my guest. But that's one thing that we did, like when we were looking at our protocol, and like obviously like we're doing a pretty big thing, which is like we want to be the native infrastructure for how fundraising is conducted in crypto, right? Like we just think it's a very problematic space the way it's done right now. And when we were designing staking, like in the beginning, we're like, should we do a staking? It's like, but like I voiced my concerns very early. Like I just don't want it to be, like, oh my God, million APY, just don't sell my token. Like, because I just think it's BS. Like I know people made money on this, but like I can't be a part of something I don't believe in, right? Like maybe it sounds trivial, maybe it sounds, infantile, but like I just don't care about that stuff. And when we designed the system, we treated, this cross section of community members, investors, startups, like it is a network. Even though we're built on Ethereum, like the protocol is a network in and of itself. So if we look at staking as a way of securing that network, what's some of the cool stuff that we can do, right? And that's when we spun up this idea of validators. And validators actually have like, it's not going to be a full-time job, but there's obviously going to be people that take it to, full-time job extents, just like running nodes or being a validator. People treat it as a full-time job these days, or being a miner.
I've seen some hardcore validators.
Yeah.
Like they live.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I'm coming from. It's like, I don't want this to be a full-time job for someone, but I also do realize that there might be enough at stake where it might be profitable for someone to have this be their full-time job. And we're actually talking with a few VCs, some of the people that we like working with, about coming on as being validators, because we want them to be performing a lot of the due diligence for new startups that are being onboarded. Because at the end of the day, we're just like a 27-person team, right? And one of the blockers, like, we can't be Uniswap, because in Uniswap, everyone is just, import contract address, right? And we can trade a new shitcoin. Like, we can't do that. Like, there's regulatory aspects, and we're only 27 people, but we also don't want to be a blocker for automation and decentralization. So that's why we have this entire system of delegators, validators, Angelblok DAO to kind of, decentralize and autonomize the process. Yeah. And basically have them get a bigger piece of the pie when it comes to staking, because they're actually doing something, and there's a mechanism. Like, if you are trying to play the system, you get slashed as a validator from your stake, right? Because you're trying to be a bad actor. You're trying to, make this protocol work in a way that it wasn't designed to. You're trying to cheat someone out of money at the end of the day, right? So, like, I definitely am proud of that system, because at the end of the day, like, I would hate to just be like, hey, they're staking, get more token for, like, whatever.
See, for me, I'm what I call a governance maxi, in terms of you need adults in the room, because you can't control what you can't measure. And, measurement and control is only a function of those who are involved. Here are the rules of engagement, right? It's consensus based. But everyone has a stake in the process. Now, from the whole staking perspective, do you think staking programs have almost become oligarchies? Because I have seen some governance measures designed to manipulate chains coming from, like whale validators who somehow marshal. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people.
I mean, like the last days of Luna. Remember, like the last proposal that I don't think was even implemented. Like, it was just Do Kwon that voted it through with, his one wallet out of multiple, right? So, yeah, that's definitely an issue.
So how do we contain pumps and dumps in crypto?
Oh wow. Well, the easy question and the answer, the easy answer and the answer that people tend to float towards, and the answer that I think a lot of our elected officials want you to believe is the only one, is via regulation, right? Which
you can't govern by regulation.
Well, tell me how it works in TradFi, right?
You can't govern by regulation. I floated an idea once around, pardon me, I call it the ICBM. intercontinental blockchain mechanism where, let's be frank, we know who many of these bad actors are. So, can we implement a global mechanism that, I'm not a fan of blacklisting people, but if you're on the record and you've done shady stuff, we all know who they are, right?
Yeah.
Put it, a global registry, public registry, whatever you want to call it, where if you're doing your due diligence, just run the checks. The same way the SEC governs. The crazy thing is we want to decentralize, but there still has to be some governance mechanism that ensures that via consensus, not a bunch of dudes just putting rules together, right? Some mechanism in place that anyone doing business or anyone engaging with certain projects, you can just go and check it against the registry via consensus. If everyone said this person's a bad, it's public trend, there has to be some mechanism. Okay, people have amnesia. The whole issue with Terra, whatever. Oh, it turned out, he did it before. He did it twice in the past. Duh. Yeah. Here we are. Right.
Well, I don't know what the protection measures on Suzu's and Kyle Davies' new exchange GTX are going to be. That's another thing. But the flip side of this is when what was it? I know DYDX blocked US users from day one, they IP blocked them, but it was a lending protocol. I want to say Aave. I don't remember. Do you remember? I think it was midpoint of last year, or maybe even earlier, that they started blocking some wallet addresses, right, that were associated with something, and people were in an uproar.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I think so too. I don't remember why they were blocking them. They were either blacklisted addresses. I don't think they were IP based blocking. No, I don't think that's what it was. But it was it was close to a year ago, and people were in an uproar because it's but it's DeFi and it's all this. But on the other hand, it's but why do I need to if we design this protocol, right, and we want to do it what's best for the users, right, why should we allow, I'm not saying I agree with this, but on the other hand, I do understand them doing it. And we designed this protocol, it's open to everyone, but let's keep it with good actors, what is so bad for decentralization, for openness, if there are some addresses that we say hey, we don't want you a part of this because we don't want, we don't want a user who's been with us for, the last 2 years or whatever, who is, I don't know, a mom and pop store, I'm making this up, a mom and pop store in San Francisco or something, who doesn't want any trouble at the end of the day. We don't want them getting USDC or USDT at the end of the day that they deposit with Coinbase, and Coinbase says, well, we actually track this USDC that you have to a terrorist cell, in somewhere, right? That's happened with Bitcoin. I don't think people remember that there is this concept of dirty Bitcoin, Bitcoin that you got from a shady source. And one of the early unique selling points of Coinbase, back in 2016 or 2017, is no, we make sure that all the Bitcoin that we have is legit. We know you're not going to get shut down from any agency in the future if you hold it. And I think people forgot about that in the last few years. It's it's just crypto is crypto. It's not really. No, it's not really.
No. There's crypto and there's crypto. The same way in the money laundering space, there's dirty money. If my bank account, if I got 6-7 digit transfers in, I'm getting a call. You come in to do some extra KYC on this. So again. It's the same people who want to defund police, but when they hear a strange sound in the middle of the night, they call 911. So So it's this weird thing. So for what in your life do you feel the most grateful?
For my family, definitely. This is something that's definitely changed. I've always been grateful. It's changed, but I don't want to say that I was never ungrateful for my family, but with each year, I just feel their place in my life becomes more and more solidified, I definitely feel it was definitely taken for granted when I was, in my teens. Like, I think it's a very normal stage, to go through, but definitely my family, my parents, my brother, my beautiful girlfriend who I've been with, for just over 2 years, my dog, and being able to spend time with them and not doing anything crazy, just being able to, have dinner, go for a walk, enjoy a, lazy Sunday afternoon. I've become very much about the simple things in life, and that's how I like it. That's how I see keeping it going forward.
So do you think you appreciate those simple things now more than you did in the past, given your evolution over the last few years?
Oh, definitely. Like, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's also we all have to do a lot of growing up, just some people do it in their 20s, some people do it in their 40s or 50s. I think a lot of time as well, we try a lot of different things, and, there's this entire aspect of external validation, right? Like, why are you doing something at the end of the day, right? Like, do you actually want to be doing this, or is this something that you think your peers will perceive as cool, or they'll perceive you as higher status, right? Like, are you buying that watch because you like it or because you want to impress people, things of this nature? Like, I'm actually really into watches, but like, what's funny is like, I don't leave home a lot, right? Like, I love watches, but like, it's not like I buy them to, go somewhere. And me and my friend, like Teddy Kleps, we nerd out over watches. We send each other watches just because we find them beautiful, pieces of engineering that we'll be able to pass down to our children, not because we want to tear up a club or whatever, on a Saturday night. So I think that, as we, with each passing year, essentially, I'm more and more solidified in what makes me, what makes me tick, and being low key, being private, as we started this podcast, having that privacy is more and more important to me.
Awesome. So Aleph Zero, what was the inspiration behind the project?
Oh man. Not sure I'm the best person to ask. Like, I am pretty close with the team, but there are some smart cookies at Aleph, I have to say. I remember the first time I met Matt and Anthony at the same time. So there are 2 out of the 4 co-founders. I met them in 2019 in Switzerland at a conference, and we just hit it off. And Anthony is Polish. A lot of the Aleph Zero team is based in Poland. Matt's from the US. I'm half Polish, half American, so like I hit it off with Anthony on the Polish side. I hit it off with Matt on the American side, and we've been pretty close friends ever since. And they've done a lot of revisions, reiterations of what it is that they are trying to achieve over the last, it's been 4 years. And I think that what they've been working on and what's available now is not only is it great, but I also know that it's just a tiny, tiny fraction of where they're going, right? Which makes it very exciting. And I remember the first time I had a more in-depth conversation about Aleph Zero with the guys, like, a few years back. And, they're telling me, like, I remember talking to Adam, who's another co-founder. He's like, yeah, we're also working on decentralized dark pools. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And then like, there's, use cases, and they're talking about, efficiency and it being, eco-friendly kind of channel. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But the thing that like just got ingrained in my mind was when they said private smart contracts. I'm like, did you say private smart contracts? Yeah. That's like one of the big features that we've been working on. I'm like, oh my God, finally someone gets it. Someone gets it. So like, this is something that I've been incredibly excited about. I think it's like my favorite feature about Aleph Zero is them having these private smart contracts, right? And this is something that I think is incredibly needed for mass adoption. One of the things that I like to say the most is like when it comes to bias in different types of sectors and services, right? Like in the US, there is a very obvious racial bias when it comes to even insurance, right? Which is incredibly problematic. Like, yeah, we're all equal until you need to pay me money because I don't trust you. So you should give me more money because I don't really trust you, right? So wouldn't it be amazing if we have a private smart contract where we know the output is true, but you don't have that much insight into what the input is, you know? Like this is something that I think is going to be amazing. And you know, like there's a lot of stuff in crypto that is unnecessarily transparent. There's a lot of things that should be more transparent that aren't, but could be. That's my thing, is like fundraising. Like if you actually think of it, like the absolute total lack of transparency when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to cap tables, when it comes to how much you actually raised, when you know, like how much reserves do you have, like what you expect, like FTX, like you expect me to, you know, Prager Metas, the first auditor in the metaverse, you know, like you're supposed to, like, I'm going to find their office in Decentraland or Sandbox, and I'm supposed to say that, you know, like, yeah, this company's been audited for $10 billion. Like, no. So there's a lot of things that are not, they lack transparency, but that should be transparent. And there's a lot of things that are very transparent right now, but not necessarily, you know, they shouldn't be that transparent, because there's a lot of people that can get hurt. So I think over the next few years, it's going to be a balancing act of, okay, crypto, you know, public, it's open, it's transparent, it's decentralized, but let's start tweaking some of these parameters, because when we started these systems, we maybe didn't envision that too much transparency or the wrong kind of transparency is actually going to hurt a lot more people, right?
Yeah.
You know, like otherwise, like that's why Zcash and Monero are still around, right? It's as much as regulators want to say, it's not because of the drug dealers, it's not because of the cartels, it's because there's people in countries where it would be illegal for them to have it, and their family's life depends on them having it, right? Like, yes, these are edge cases. This is not day-to-day use, but there are these edge cases, and we should respect them, and we should plan for them, you know? But so that's kind of where I'm coming from with this.
Yeah, but even with crypto, the reality is, in the grand scheme of things, if you do the math, there is a lot more exponentially high money laundering and criminality in fiat than crypto. So this idea that, oh my God, crypto, crime, terrorism, but wait a minute. Okay. You know, when C-130s are dropping suitcases full of cash, you know, in the Tajikistan desert. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see wallet keys there. I didn't see a MetaMask stick. So that's where things get a little interesting. And now, rolling that forward a little bit, do you think AI is a scary or amazing development, you know, in the face of ChatGPT, for example, and that evolution and what it's doing to the human condition?
I think any major technological breakthrough should be seen as a positive. Just my general kind of rule of thumb that I rather implement. I would hate to see a day where we are scared or worried about making technological advancements. So I'm always going to say that it is a positive. But looking at things from a slightly different perspective, you know, what was social media was supposed to be, right? Like we were supposed to connect. We were supposed to.
Correct.
It was all about positivity and bringing additional benefits. Correct. And right now we have an entire generation that is essentially enslaved to it and just, you know, chasing cheap dopamine hits. Yeah. We have, you know, I haven't read any studies on this. This is all anecdotal when it comes to attention spans, but like I'm pretty sure our attention spans have never been lower. Yeah, you know, like I think it's very like actually I can only fall asleep listening to like either an audiobook or a podcast. Like I need something to focus on. So I was listening to Mr. Beast on Lex Friedman's show, right? Literally last night. And he actually said, you know, Jimmy, Mr. Beast, he said, like, I can't watch slow movies anymore because in his mind, like he's done an amazing job. Like, you know, he has hundreds of millions of views on each one of his videos, you know, like he's done incredible and hats off to him. But he said that he had to rewire his brain for this because in his mind, everything is 3 seconds cut, 3 seconds cut, 3 seconds cut, because he knows what he has to do to keep the viewer engaged. Right. Yeah. But on the flip side, he says he can't watch movies anymore. He can't watch, especially slow movies, because his brain is no longer able to process, you know, scenes that take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes, right? So there is a lot of downside to this. And if we had this conversation, you know, 20 years ago, like no one would have bought it, in 2003.
It does rewire the brain because in the grand scheme of things, attention span is a very, very big freaking deal. So second floors where my bedrooms are, no electronic leaves this ground floor. There's no TVs up there. There's no Bose system up there. There's no cell phones. Nothing goes up the stairs for that one reason you just mentioned. Now, actually, I have two nephews who are actually asked, when was the last time you picked up a pen, right, and you wrote a letter by hand?
Yeah.
Never done it. Never done it. And these are teens, right? And they are on social media. They do all these things. And going back to your earlier point, technology has an equal measure of good. Unfortunately, when it swings the other direction, it takes about a generation or two to see those effects. Kids can't pay attention. I have a friend who's a teacher, and she tells me all the time that the worst part of the pandemic and all was kids with masks on their faces. First, they're plagued with the social media attention span, the TikTok generation, right? And now they can't get oxygen directly into their brains, and you expect them to pay attention in class. You want them to sit still? They can't. So half her day, she's writing kids up into detention because they just can't sustain. They can't sit still. And part of learning requires undivided attention. And now we're in a place where the tools, and I'm a huge fan of technology, but I do believe that at some point, we have to know when to draw the line and say, hey, but when is that point, right? When is, I know I have people who, they want to go brag on Twitter about the latest product, feature they shipped. They get 10,000 likes. And then I ask them, did you sell one extra? Did you make 10,000 new sales after you got those likes on Twitter? Oh, wait, it's coming. It's coming. 6 months later, you're getting vanity metrics, but you haven't made an extra damn sale. So again, it's now
or people buying followers, right? Which is the norm now in crypto. It's a new project that just started, but it has 120,000 followers. Interesting.
I do. And I'm disappointed in Elon Musk for that, because I really thought he would have brought the hammer on the whole artificial, because I thought that would have reset a lot of narratives at the...
Yeah, I think it's coming. To be honest.
Because I get projects who will pitch all the time, and they'll send me these decks, and they go, yeah, we've got, 80,000 followers on Twitter. I do a simple due diligence. I go look at the last 15 posts where you have 80,000 followers, but you put one post, you had 5 likes, maybe one comment, which was spam.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? So
and also like doing that, but there's also great tools like, hey, any other, VCs or angel investors, in this game, use Social Blade. If you have obviously even I look at our own stuff, I look at competitors or, projects that I want to invest in myself. And obviously take everything with a grain of salt, because I remember one time we partnered with Rarity Sniper, and they did a giveaway, while tagging us. So obviously there's going to be a peak in followers, right? Yeah. But if you have these perfectly formed peaks like this, right? And especially spread out, and it's 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, wow, every month you had exactly 5,000 people join you on Twitter. That's absolutely incredible. I don't know how you did it, but quotas met.
Someone's making. So finally, I know we're coming up in time. What does friendship mean to you? And what advice would you give a teenage version of you, your teenage self?
So friendship means a lot, but I'm the kind of person that I don't have a lot of friends. And before you break out the violins for me here, what I mean is for me, friendship is, a lot of people, they throw around terms of oh, that's my best friend, and that's my best friend. It's oh, and at the end of the day, you have 58 best friends, right? I don't buy that. I don't think that's how it works. So I definitely keep the people that I keep around me, I keep for life, right? And then the rest is, like we can be friends / acquaintances or something. So like friendship is something that's, it does mean a lot to me. Like I've said this for, I think the majority of my adult life. Like I definitely think my brother's my best friend. Like he is that person that, and I do, that's one of the ways I gauge friendship is like, how long can we not talk and just jump right back into it? Right. Like I only have a handful of people like that in my life. Right. Like it's like you never skip a beat when you talk, but it can be a month or two before you talk again. Right. Because everybody's got a lot of stuff going on. Right. So that's how I kind of view this.
And what advice would you give your teenage self?
Well, there's the obvious: buy Bitcoin. And no, it's not a scam. Like, man, like that's one thing. A lot of people,
everyone's advice.
Yeah. A lot of people, like, I say this in jest because it makes me laugh when people be like, yeah, like, if I could go back in time and buy Google or Apple stock, or, like, I would have bought Bitcoin. I definitely would have bought Bitcoin if I knew about it. It's like, but there's one thing to know about it. There's another thing to actually do it. And then there's the third thing, which is don't sell. It's like, because you see Bitcoin at $1 or Bitcoin at 10 cents, in 2010 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you see Bitcoin, even like, after whatever happened in 2022, which was just insane. Let's say 21,300 or 21,500, whatever the price is today. Like, let's not even talk about 69K. Let's not even talk about 69K, right? Let's talk about 20K, right? Like they see $1 to 20K.
Yeah, right? They would have sold at $300.
You would not have held, my friend.
I mean,
right?
unless you're Doctor Who or something. I mean, even Doctor Who would have sold. I mean, so it's that.
How many people? Like they were pretty, like, I love honesty in people who made it big. And I love how many people were like, I just forgot about it, to be honest, until I saw the news, right? Like how many people were like, I mined Bitcoin on my laptop in 2011 because it was just like, I read about it somewhere. And I just thought, like I'm into computer science. So I thought it was really cool. Right. And then it's like, I didn't know that it was a thing until, CNN or Bloomberg or whatever told me that it's hitting 16K in 2017, right? So like, I respect that a lot, that's the kind of mentality you need to have.
Yeah, or the kid who let his college roommate plagiarize his term paper in college, okay, for 30 Bitcoins.
I didn't know this. Oh, that's amazing.
I don't know if that roommate is still alive or hung himself or something.
Damn.
So finally, what was your favorite cartoon character as a kid?
Favorite cartoon character? Damn. There's probably something that I wasn't supposed to watch. It's probably like Cartman from South Park when I was like,
Felix the cat.
Way. It's probably something like that. Yeah.
Crazy. So
it's definitely like that's the thing, it's like with alcohol when you're young, like drinking, having a beer, sneaking a beer when you're 16, it never tastes as good as then, right? Like alcohol right now, it's like, it's like whatever. The same thing about watching stuff. When you're young, when you're like 10, 11 years old, and you're not supposed to be watching this, and maybe if mom comes back from work, she's gonna be like, wait, what is this? That's the fun stuff. So it's the same thing. So I think I'm gonna go with South Park for this. Probably Cartman.
When I was 13, I remember this very vividly. My uncle would have alcohol-free beer. I didn't know this. So we'd go to his house and I'll swipe 2-3 6-packs. And at the time, and he lived in the Pike. We were in Jordan. So it was a quick bike ride shot across. So I'll just swipe a couple, put it in my thing, and I'll just roll. It's like, yeah, have fun or whatever. For some reason, Alex, I felt a buzz. Maybe it was a placebo. I thought I was swiping real beer and all that. And I was feeling tipsy. Years later, come to find out it was non-alcoholic. And he knew the entire time. And he'd tell my dad, like, dude, your boy just came in. It's like, whatever, just whatever. So advice to my teenage self, read the label. Just read the label.
Or, hey, man, have fun with alcohol-free beer. That's cool, too,
So finally, just rolling things up, do you think, just given the history of Europe, Poland, given what certain parts of Europe has been through, privacy and self-sovereignty is more of a hot topic than it is in, say, the United States, where, people are just very ready to, it works. I'm going to be a part of TikTok, whatever it is, whereas I don't care if TikTok in the United States shows, when you open it up, it shows kids twerking and doing whatever. But then when you go to other countries, it shows science games. They don't care about those things. Whereas in Europe, there's a lot more fresh history, right? Experiences with, just personal freedoms and things like that. Do you think some of that contributes to the issue of privacy and self-sovereignty?
Oh, definitely. And also looking, Poland was under communist rule until, the end of a decade in the 80s, right? Like, and before that, we've been under communist rule since World War II up until 1990, essentially. And 89. But before that, like, Poland was wiped off the map pre-World War One, right? Like if you look at our Independence Day right now, we consider like 1918 to be like when Poland was again formed, because we were wiped. We were literally a country that was wiped off the map, right? Poland was partitioned 3 times by European superpowers in 1772, in 1792, and 1795, right? They basically took parts of Poland and said, Poland is no more, right? This is Prussia, this is Russia. It was very problematic. So
stitching it, ripping it, stitching it, ripping it.
Exactly. So if you look at things of this nature, like we've had a lot of stuff happen over the last century, but even going further back. But especially when we're looking at Poland under communist rule, there are a lot of things that I believe, but I truly hope simply would not pass right now. So something like the Patriot Act, which we mentioned earlier, right? Like that is a gross overreaching of what a government can and should do, right? And hopefully I'm right. And if we have this Patriot Act moment, hopefully we never have it. But if it would ever happen, I hope that we would act and be able to do something. But I think there is a difference between this, classic stereotypical West and what's going on in Central and Eastern Europe, just because of history of communist rule, and I think that it is fresh enough in a lot of our minds where a lot of things that happen in the West are going to be very, very difficult to implement here. And I do think that privacy and basically just not. Okay, so I'll take this. I'll slightly change this, because when I was growing up, I was very liberal, right? Yeah. And right now, I think, I don't know whether I'm conservative or libertarian. I'm not big on labels, but I'm basically, you leave me alone, I leave you alone, and we're all going to be happy, right? Like this is how I want to do things, right? And I think that is why we in Poland have never really had a leftist government, right? Like right now, Poland is controlled by a rightist conservative party called PiS, called Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, so the Law and Justice Party. A lot of bad, some good, whatever. Let's not get into it. Not a big fan. However, when we were ruled by PO, Platforma Obywatelska, which is around 10 years ago, that was the dominant party. They were always called leftist. However, if you look at a political spectrum, they were moderate. They were smack in the middle. So our most leftist party in charge was actually a moderate party, right? And I think this stems again from, our history with communism, and everything that skews a bit too far left, we're automatically like, nope, this isn't going to pass, right? So there are these differences. Like I know that there's things happening, with the Democratic Party in the US that if they try to do something in Poland like that, it would never fly, So there are these fundamental differences in how we approach some problems and some topics.
That's very insightful. Very insightful. So rapid fire round: Rolex, Breitling, or Raymond Weil?
Oh, Rolex. Classic. Rolex is king.
Really? Interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the problem about Rolex is just, I know it's lightning round, but Rolex is either worn by people who really appreciate what a Rolex is, or people who made it big and they just want something gold and blingy, right? Which is a whole separate thing. So it's tough to be the king, but Rolex is king.
Interesting. All right. Porsche, BMW, or Mercedes?
A few years ago, Porsche. Right now, Mercedes, more low key, very comfy.
Ah, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Huh. Right. And and finally, if you had an opportunity to meet someone, dead or alive, and three options were: one, Genghis Khan; two, Napoleon; three, Nelson Mandela.
I'd go Genghis Khan here because this is the greatest conqueror in the history of the human race. And this is a man that has unified warring tribes and made them one of the greatest threats that the world has ever seen. Yeah. And there is a lot of managerial experience to be learned from a person like that. So simply for that matter.
That's a management specialist in you speaking.
Hey man, I'm just here to learn.
Hey, we're all learning. Alex, thank you so much for being on Thanos. No, this was a very insightful, lively conversation. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you back for sure. We'll be keeping an eye out. And please, before we wrap up, can you share how listeners can get to you?
Absolutely.
Zero,
I want to say, Alani,
the whole nine.
Yeah, thank you so much, because this was an absolute pleasure, even though I'm about to go to sleep because it's past 10 here. So angelblok.io is what we've been working on for 2+ years. And the only social media you'll ever find me is on Twitter. So Alex_STRZ. You can hit me up. We can talk.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.